That's what I'm talking about.
Wait! Okay, now, from the beginning.
Welcome to BS, Beyond Stereotypes, a podcast about lawyers using their authentic voices to change the world.
It's really been that journey to understanding who am I? What do I believe in? What do I want to do? What's important? And that's how I found my footing as a human, as a mom, and as a lawyer, as a leader. It's been that journey to really standing in my ground and being able to take up space as myself authentically, right? Like not trying to hide behind a story, a resume, but just being who I am, my entire story.
Welcome to BS, Beyond Stereotypes. I'm your host, Merle Vaughn. Here to BS with me today is Jennifer Hibbert Brewer, whose story I find fascinating and who will no doubt inspire all of you to embrace your authenticity. Hey, Jen.
Hey, Merle.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Absolutely. It's been way too long. So, the way I like to start these conversations, Jen, is by saying a little bit about you, and then what I know about you. I don't go into a long dossier or anything because it's 2023 and people can Google you and look you up. But I do like to say briefly a little bit about you, and so. Jennifer is the Chief Ethics and Compliance Officer at Activision Blizzard here in Santa Monica, California. She graduated from Hastings School of Law. She started her legal career as an associate at Skadden, was there for about 4 years, and then went in-house and has done tons of things. I think she may have done more things that I've done in my career, and she's a lot younger. So that kind of tells you why we want to talk to Jennifer. What did I miss, or are there any highlights you want to add, Jennifer?
There's a lot of stuff along the way that you're well aware of, and I think that's the gist of it for sure.
Okay, great. So I like to start out by having people give us an idea of where you're from, like who you are based on your personal experience, where you grew up, who was kind of the major influences in your life, whether it's parents or teachers or not. And if you could just kind of grace us with that part of your story to start, I'd really appreciate it.
Of course. I knew you were going to ask this question. And I was thoughtful about how I wanted to answer. And part of it is because I think if you look at me, you think I just have, I have a story of white privilege, and that is true. But the things that really shaped me as a young person were the things that you couldn't see and the things that were sort of going on behind the scenes. So I grew up in Portland, Oregon, and family of 4, everything really looked just right on the outside. In fact, it looked perfect. But what was going on behind the scenes was not. And so I really came from, addiction and mental illness. And that's it's an important part of my story because it's part of the reason I do what I do and I am the way I am. I did have, I had a really great dad who loved me and believed in me no matter what. And that was my ground, and that was really my rock. But I didn't feel safe a lot in my home. And, there wasn't a lot of, nothing was fair. It wasn't just. and there was a lot of lies. And so I think, I'm somewhat, my belief in the importance of fairness and
Mhm.
justice and the truth, I think I feel so strongly about it because of the imbalance of those things in the house I grew up in. It was all about, keep this looking this way on the outside, um, without, talking about what was going on the inside. And so I think those are part of an important part of why I am the way I am. I hightailed it out of Oregon and Portland, as soon as I could, and I made my way on my own. And I think, I also developed sort of rules because there were no rules actually in my house. And
Interesting.
so I made my own, and I honestly made too many of them. But I had a safe haven in school, because in school you do the work, you get the grade. Like, I had this element of control, this illusion of control, and I felt safe. And I had countless teachers, who believed in me and supported me, and school was a totally safe place, and I was just going to get out. Um,
Where
and
did you
I
go?
did.
Where did you go undergrad, Jen?
I went to Oregon. It was the Robert D. Clark Honors College, which is a school within the University of Oregon. So I was within Oregon. And then I graduated from college. And a week later, I packed up my little, 1989 Accord and drove to California. And my family was like, "You're going to be back in a week." I never came back. That was my last time in Oregon, was a week after I graduated from college.
Wow, that and I knew some of that, but I had never heard you relate it that way. And so it's not a coincidence. I think that we found each other
Mm,
because I had a similar experience growing up, with a father who, was an alcoholic.
mm,
And the lack of fairness, my lack of fairness was how I felt like I was treated compared to my sister,
mhm.
because I was treated better than she
Mm,
was, and I always had guilt associated with that. So, it's really interesting how those things, and I actually now consider them traumas,
yeah,
just childhood traumas that form who you are. Do you feel that as well?
100%. I feel like I've spent the last, 20 years understanding the sort of, and being able to call them that, being able to call them, traumas. Um, because my family story continued. It didn't get better. In fact, it got to the point where it's really out there, it became no longer a secret. And um really understanding what those things are, those traumas, and how, like, finding resilience, I think, is about
Yeah.
understanding them. And it's also such a, resilience is, it's almost everything. And so being able to see how they are part of my story, but they aren't me. They don't define me. They're just a part of my story. Has been a really important part of my journey.
Did you decide at some point that you were not gonna raise your family? Like, did you make this rule? Like, I had this experience, but if I have kids, they're not gonna have this experience, and I'm gonna do things very differently because I know I did.
Yeah. I mean, I think I've spent the last 20 years unpacking because I didn't really acknowledge the truth of all the different things I grew up with. I was loyal to the story, if you will, in my family, and the disease
Mhm.
in my family. Um, and so at sort of the age of 30, I took a different path, and nothing was going to be the same. And in the last 20 years, I've spent really building, and a lot of that is, I think, work on, myself. But my home is so incredibly different than the one I grew
Mhm.
up in, and it's probably the thing I'm the most proud of in my entire life, is that the safety and the love and the sobriety in my home is is a blessing. That, my husband and I have worked hard for, both of us, with our stories, but absolutely it was my plan and my commitment, but also it just sort of happened because I kept opening doors and kept seeing more. And my career really paralleled that journey as well.
Well, and it's really interesting because you said that there were no rules. You created a lot of rules. You left, you escaped. You went to law school of all things, which is a rule-based
Yep.
existence, and obviously did exceptionally well. Ended up at Skadden, one of the top, if not, especially at that time, one of the top firms in the country, if not the world, which but then when I met you, I cold called you as an associate. I think you were a fourth year associate or sixth year associate or something. And we talked, and you were kind of having this epiphany at the time that maybe this wasn't the right thing for you. Do you remember what was going on and why you thought, big law might not be right for you?
Yes. So I think it ties back to the all the ideas I had as a young person, which were get the best grades, perform, get to the next
Yep.
level, get the big job, get here, get there. I literally had a compulsion to work and to do more. That was like, it was if I was chasing some of those inner monsters, like I was going to get ahead of them. And I think what happened is I got to that place where I got the things. I graduated at the very top of my class. I got this big job. I was successful. I was good. I was doing all the things. I checked those boxes, and I was not happy, and I was
Mhm.
not happy, and I was not okay. And I think that was the beginning of me realizing that there was more. There was so much more. And it wasn't actually a problem with my career or my work. I loved my time at Skadden. It gave me incredible training. I still have such, close memories, and I was really mentored there.
Mhm.
So it wasn't that, but it was this. I had been chasing this thing that I thought was going
Mhm.
to be okay, and it was becoming very clear that it was not. It was not. It wasn't going to work that way. And that was really the beginning when you and I met, and you were a significant part of it, Merle, because you said a lot of things that still, sit with me today. But you were one of those people who I met during that time where I was really beginning this transformation.
Yeah, and for me, and thanks for that. For me, I think that chasing is like when you grow up in a dysfunctional environment, but you embrace resilience early for whatever reason, because it's just who you are. One of the things that you do to escape or survive is try to be perfect,
Yeah.
right? Is you're searching for that perfection. Everything needs to be perfect because if it's perfect, then maybe you'll be okay. Everything will be okay. There won't be negative consequences to you or the people you love if you as a child can figure out how to make everything around you perfect.
100%.
So you decide, that you're gonna go in house, and you joined. It wasn't it the
The
was it
firm.
a it
The
was
firm.
called The Firm, and
The
it was
firm.
the agency
The
that
biggest talent management.
that
Yeah.
show what yeah that show what was the show was made about it, right?
I was just at the time it was the biggest talent management firm that there was. Yeah, and I went in as a general counsel. I mean, it was I was quite young to be in that role, and it was quite a place with a lot going on. But the one thing is, I did love the job, right? I loved
Right.
being able to do all those different things. The one thing and I still know this about myself, I always have to be learning. I always have to be doing something new. There has to be a challenge. I don't want to be doing the same thing over and over again. And that was something in that general counsel role. There was some of everything. And I really enjoyed that. Entertainment and that environment was definitely not a match for me. That was that was more of a reflection of the house I grew up in than than anything else. So it was not, that was not the right place for me. But I did love the job itself. But that was when I needed to take a break after that from the practice of law.
Right. And so the break, so you say, you're like, I need to take a break. And I said, well, join me, be a recruiter. I had a different company and you came in and you kicked butt for, some like short period of time. I think you were like the top recruiter in the company within a couple of months. And you were like, okay, I've done that. Time to go off and do something else. I feel like that's when you became the person that I really see you as. And I've never told you this, but I see you as Zen Jen, where you found your Zen. Like, I think you went to a yoga retreat or something that may have been where you met your husband. Talk to me about how you found that Zen.
It's been so many different parts of that. It was definitely the beginning. And I appreciate you saying that. And I do, you are someone who has, to use those words, seen me, I felt, but that was the beginning of a really transitional time where I just knew I had to do something different to not recreate all the things that I came from, that there was no safety in perfect. There was no safety in doing everything exactly right. And, it was a lot of different things, from, there wasn't one little thing, but it was sort of following the doors and opening them. There was a huge part of, there's so many different types of recovery and healing and meditation and therapy that are available. And there's a lot of different things that have been a part of my, my sort of personal journey, to understanding sort of who I want to be, who I am, and who I want to be. I really would describe it as a journey to authenticity, right? Because the whole perfection thing was like, I'm trying to become this perfect person so that none of the bad things can happen. And I think I was afraid that if I actually deal with what's underneath, am I still going to be good at my job? Am I still going to be able to work? And the truth is, of course, it's quite the opposite. My journey to authenticity has brought me a bigger life, a bigger career, but it's really been that journey to understanding, who am I? What do I believe in? What do I want to do? What's important? And that's how I found my footing as a human, as a mom, and, as a lawyer, as a leader. It's been that journey to really standing in my ground, and being able to take up space as myself authentically, right? Like not trying to hide behind a story, a resume, but just being who I am, my entire story. My family story is not my stain, right? Like I get to make my own story. And I think it's something that I had to discover on my own over time. And I'll still be, it's an ongoing journey. It'll keep me busy, I think, during this lifetime.
So when we first started, you said something about, people, all these things that we're talking about is kind of what you're carrying, right, in your backpack. We never know what people are carrying in their backpacks. Right. But from the outside, what people might see is just kind of what you called, white privilege. And I appreciate your acknowledging that based on that and what your story really is. what stereotypes do you think that people see? What stereotypes do you think you've had to overcome, and what stereotypes are you still overcoming on this journey?
That's a great question. I think that people have thought for whatever reason that I just had a very spoon-fed life. And I have, whether it's a combination of one, I have like I don't want to undercut that. I have enjoyed extensive privilege. That's just a fact. And that's, something I would never minimize. But I think people have assumed, with a smile on my face and the way I would, maybe hold things together, that things came very easily to me. I had teachers, I think, who assumed I just had incredible ease, and they didn't know what was going on.
Mhm.
They didn't know what was going on in my house or behind the scenes. And I think that has continued. And I think I'm a part of that because I think I present that. But it's really just this assumption that there's been that ease. And I think the reality is I've been the only woman in the room in more times in in my career than I can count. Right. And I think
Right.
it's been an incredible journey. That times have changed, things have changed, but there's still, the subtleties of bias are a real part of, you know, human life. And I think we all have them and have to acknowledge them. But that's a part of my experience. A lot of today, it's the subtleties of people just not being able to see. And I think there's a lot more discussion about it and there's a lot more awareness of it, but there's still a, a a fair amount of dismissing of it, right?
Yep.
Like
Yep.
that's just the truth. And for me, it's sort of knowing when is the hill I'm going to fight? When is the moment it really matters? What are the things I just let go of and I move past and I let those roll off? And when are the moments that I'm going to say, no, we're not going to do this. So I think, um, part of the way I commit my work, today to, what's right, right? But I take it, my team's job is to, is the workplace as it is today. So a lot of what I do and how I feel about overcoming, you know, s- stereotypes in general comes out in the work we do, which is about getting
Yes.
to equity, about getting to justice, about getting to the right outcome, the truth, right?
Right.
Not leaning one way, but just the truth. And so and a lot of people have had, I mean, this, every human has a story, right? And has been through a lot. And when we approach, any kind of matter, there's humans on all sides, right? And to um really keep that in mind. But for me, it's like the service of what I do in fighting for equity is a big part of sort of um how how I overcome that for myself, if that makes sense.
It does. Now, I said to you, I have all these I have stereotypes about you, right? I mean, and I know you. And one of my stereotypes about you is when I was preparing for this and I'm reading it and said, Chief Ethics and Compliance Officer. And I was like, ethics? Hell yeah, absolutely. Compliance? Really, Jennifer? you know, because to me, you are like the epitome of think outside the box, do things differently to get them done, and so do you understand? It's like, how does that work for you? And explain to me how you bring your full self to that role.
It's a great question. And I think you're right. And I think that the reason I am here today in this role is because of that. Because, when we're talking about e- ethics, and we're talking about, doing the right thing,
Hmm.
you do have to push outside the box. And, you know, I won't go into a ton of detail about, my role today, but one of the things I'm the most proud of that was a passion project of mine at this company was, I'm sure you've heard of ethical liaison programs. If you haven't, they're, sort of a best practice in the
Hmm.
ethics and compliance world. You sort of nominate regular people to take on a role as a liaison. We kicked off in 2018, and it was an idea I'd had for years. And one of the things I am is relentless, and I
Yep.
really wanted to do this. And it was like, well, we can't do a global thing, blah blah. There was all the obstacles because of the way our company is set up, and but we got the support to do it at the highest level of the company. And that program we rolled out is called the Way to Play Heroes. So our ethics and compliance team is called the Way to Play. What's the right way
Hmm.
to play? And these are Way to Play heroes. And there's now, more than 140 of them around the globe. And it's been the most inspirational, um, most important thing we've done as an organization.
Wow.
Because, when you look, ethics and compliance can't be a corporate function where corporate folks sit there and make sure everybody does the right thing. It has to really grow, uh, be planted and grow where it is. And so you have, and people always are going to be more inspired by hearing people who they know, who they trust. So we have nominated, highly, um, credible people who are trusted people, trusted by their peers, trusted by leaders, and they care about, doing the right thing. They care about equity, they care about inclusion. And these folks have been, you know, part of the reason I've stayed in my chair. They've inspired me to that level. They've made us better. And so that thinking outside the box was a huge, 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 win. And I think it's one of the things where when we do the same thing over and over and over again, nothing changes if nothing changes. So
Exactly.
I think it's a critical part of, yes, we want to be consistent, we want to do the right thing, but we have to be willing to push the envelope or else we're not going to get to a better place.
Now, is diversity part of that initiative?
So we have an incredible chief, DE&I officer Kristen Hines, who is a partner and a friend and someone I should actually introduce you to. She's amazing. Um, what I would say is a big part of our worlds are integrated and combined and overlap. So, you know, a number of the types of, so my team is responsible for, like, I have a workplace integrity team, which reports up to me, and a team of workplace investigators. And then I have ethics and compliance investigations, and we have operations, training, data, communications, and we have our heroes program. A lot of the matters and concerns that come in are really in they're all in overlapping spaces. So we
Mm.
partner really closely on those efforts. And I think similar to ethics and compliance, DE and I can't sit in a corporate function somewhere and be effective, right? It has to be part of every single thing that we do as leaders.
Yeah.
So you can't just check the box over there and have, the right person. It really has to be infused throughout the organization. So there's a lot of partnership and overlap amongst the teams.
Interesting. And so, you're you're a global company, and you talked about this program that you have, and it sounds like you have representatives from all over, probably the world. How do you uh, how have you learned to integrate all that and deal with that and deal with the different cultures? And is it easy, or is it challenging?
It has become easy because it's such an incredible group of people. I would say that part of the reason we're able to effectively respond and include every culture around the globe is because we have a voice. We have a strong voice from every place around the globe. And our team has been ahead on some of those efforts. I think it's a real watch out for US based companies that are global to, remember and include all of the individual people from around the globe. And I think that's this here. I mean, we have a number, it's a ton goes into this program, right? We have, communication channel where there's, a Slack channel where the heroes are constantly asking questions, sharing stories, seeking guidance. And we have regular sessions, at least once a quarter, regular communication, so that we're always there's a lot of programming and support that goes into that effort, and it's a two-way sharing. We do annual training for all of them, and their ability, like, these are people who speak up, right? So these are the people who say, hey, you got to think about this. They review every policy before it rolls out, and they've been able to really if you roll a policy out and you don't check with people and it doesn't work, you've made no progress. But
Exactly.
when the policy is really understood and reflects the people who work at the company around the globe, then we have something meaningful. So these people have been really a part of that. And sometimes it's just the way things are described in another language. It's the term, it's this, it's that. It can be small things, it can be big things. And they share input with us about all kinds of things. Like if a communication goes out from another team that lands poorly, we're very likely to hear about it through our Heroes Network.
That's amazing. That is because, I'm a firm believer that, you have to get people involved. In order for people to actually participate, they need to be involved in the decisions. You can't just tell people you have to do this, because they don't in the end, right? And
100%.
so
If they don't buy in, they're not going to do anything. I agree.
I'm a believer in surveys too. It's like in the offices that I'm responsible for. I put out a survey. Do you want to do this, that, or the other? Please choose. And if they choose it, then they kind of have to come. Right? They kind of have to do it. But if I just say we're gonna do this, then they're not gonna do it.
Absolutely.
So back to your journey. And I think one of the things that people would want to know is you've gone from really kind of, and you can disabuse me of this if this isn't true, but I've always been left with the impression that the compliance group or is not part of the legal group, and I've had people tell me that if they leave legal and go to compliance, it's hard to go back to legal. Is that true, or is that incorrect?
That's an interesting question. I don't think that I am a firm believer that you can do anything you want and you can go back and forth. And I've done things already in my career many times that people told me you can't do. So I kind of say, I don't believe any of that. In my journey towards compliance. So when I graduated from law school and I went to Skadden, I focused on M&A, but it was also, Sarbanes-Oxley was new, and that whole compliance function was really developing. And I've really fallen into it today. So for many years when I was here, ethics or compliance was part of legal. We reported up to the chief legal officer. And then that changed here. And so for the last, has it been two years or so, ethics and compliance is separate from legal. I think it's great when it's separate because you can have different perspectives, right? So we work together closely, and I'm very integrated and close partners with the legal team, and there are many lawyers, myself included, on my team, but we have a different lens. We look at things from a different perspective. And sometimes the right thing from a legal perspective and a legal risk perspective is different from the right thing from my perspective and from an ethics and compliance perspective. And I think it's important to have that, have both views at the table and have them separate. That said, I don't see any reason that you can't, go back and forth. I think different companies structure it differently. And, for anybody sort of young in their career, I was so worried, oh, I'm going to get pigeonholed. I'm going to get
Right.
stuck. We're never stuck. And, I definitely have a natural inclination if somebody tells me I can't do something to do it anyway. And
Yep.
I recommend it. I recommend that inclination. Nothing should be
Well,
impossible.
the way I think about that is, I love the way you phrase it. The way I think about it is, if somebody tells me I have to do something, I'm not doing it. So
Right.
so and it works the other way as well, probably even better. But so talk to me. Are you still doing yoga? Are you going to retreats? I mean, what are you doing to keep your zen?
It's so funny. So another part of my journey has been, when I had kids, they both ended up having some crazy health challenges that really impacted in my zen, for one. But also, just my path. It became a huge trying to navigate them to wellness. And I'm happy to say they're both like 13 and 11 and healthy and thriving and
Great.
incredible today. But we went through a lot of scary times. And I went through a lot of crazy things that happened in my family. I lost my dad a few years later, my mom, my brother has had a very unfortunate path. And so it's sort of like I'm the remaining person in my family. And that zen sort of like, without me being tied to the ground and myself, there's no way to really walk through those things. And so I would say the thing, um for me, it's a combination of living by, intuition, authenticity, and grit, and finding the peace, in between, right? So it's like going through those hard things, like having something not okay with my kids.
That's the worst.
That's the doozy. And I really had to find just this surrender where I was going to just let go. I can only do what I can do, and then I have to let go of the outcome. And that applies to every aspect of my life, my career, and my personal life. I can do what I can do, and then I have to let go of the outcome. And really learning how to surrender those things. I don't think there's a quick fix. I think it's journey. And, the thing for me is I have a tendency, because I learned this as a small child, to work my way through,
Yeah.
just work, 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 work. And there are side benefits that come from that, but learning how to dial it back and find the space is part of that. And I just don't think there's a quick answer for it. And I think that even those hardships, they come with resilience, and they come with other gifts that are sometimes hard to see in the moment, but you can see them later.
So how has remote work played into all of that for you? Has it been a benefit, or has it made things tougher?
That's a great question. So for me, remote work has not made work-life balance easier, in the sense that I can sit here and work 24 hours a day without stopping now.
Right.
I don't know if it's like that for everybody. I'm sure it's a little bit individual, but it is incredible in that, it's a lot easier to be there for a moment. We've had an incredibly busy time, though, at the company for the last couple of years. And I had, very busy time in 2021, and it was a Saturday night, 11:30 at night. I was still just working away, and my daughter came up to me and she put her hands on her hips and she said, "Mom, you are making a choice. This is a choice." And I thought, what does she mean? I have to do this. I have no choice. And I was like, no, she's actually right. And I got offline and I went downstairs with her and we were going to sleep. And she's like, "Mom, your job is not that important. It's video games. You sit on a screen." She's like, "You're not a police officer. You're not saving people's lives."
Oh my
And
God.
I mean, I was like, she really is correct, right? Like, she's really correct. And that was a turning point for me where I was like, you know what, I have to I'm going to listen to this small, powerful, shocking. I created a small, little, powerful human. But I that was a turning point for me. And I've worked to try to have some balance. I think now I get to go into the office periodically, which is fun. But there is a lot of remote work, and I try to have balance, sometimes with more success, sometimes with less.
Out of the mouth of babes, right?
Right. Right.
Well, we just had a meeting at our office the other day, and the subject that one of my colleagues wanted to talk about was called work creep. And that's what you just described. And she was funny. She said, "I'm not talking about the person around the corner who's actually a creep. I mean, this is work that's creeping into
Yep.
your personal life."
Yep.
Right. And then one of our other colleagues said, the way that she looks at it is that nobody's going to die in what we do.
Right.
If you don't do it right there in that moment, if you don't do it until the next morning, nobody's going to die. And it's just amazing that your young daughter
Yeah.
understands that. But it's also a testament to you and your husband.
Yeah. I hope so. She's something.
So we're kind of, at the end of our time here, which I'm really sad to say. Um, Wanted to ask you if you have any suggestions or any illustrative stories that you want to share with our audience to encourage them or advise them on how to embrace their authenticity and be themselves, but still, do this thing we call practicing law in corporate America.
Mm, love it. I think of a story. I mean, the thing I will say is I have over the years become more unapologetically myself. And it's it's been good. I had a really my last boss at this company is a woman named Fran Townsend, and she is a powerhouse, 5 feet tall, 5 feet tall and powerful. And she went through a lot of, you know, challenge and turmoil. She was deeply criticized, and she held her head high and she fought for all the same things, and even for people who were criticizing her, she just did the right thing and she kept doing the job. And she empowered me and others. And it was one of those moments where I sometimes think it's easier to see one step away. So I got to watch this person who just kept going. It was not fair what was happening, and she just kept going and she just kept being who she was. And I don't know, when the lay of the land gets sorted out in terms of fairness and equality and justice, but I know that the respect I have for her and for that, like being able to just keep going. And so for myself, I am unapologetically, authentic today. And it's been a journey to get there. But my career has only gotten bigger as a result of it. So I don't know if I have, like I said, it's easier for me to step back and see that example of Fran and
That's
how
perfect.
she walked through it than it is for me to reflect back on myself.
No, that's perfect. And I'm sure that, because she did that for you, you're doing that for others, right?
Right.
You're doing that for others within your company. And more importantly, you're doing that for your daughter and your son, So that is it's the best illustration of how other people can show you the way. And I am 100% with you in terms of just finding your authenticity and sticking to it, because in the end you have to be able to look at yourself in the
That's right.
mirror.
That's right.
It's in the end, it's basically just you. So you need to be able to feel good about you. And I've always been really impressed. You say that over 20 years you've done this, but I mean, I met you, a lot. Well, it's been 20 years, I guess,
20 years,
almost 20
20 years.
years. And you have been on that journey, and I've always seen you as been unapologetically authentic, and that's what I've always loved about you. And I think that's probably what has drawn us together.
I was gonna say, you are the you are the definition of authentic, Merle. So that's a deep compliment coming from you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate
Merle,
that.
it's also contagious. Like I look at the team, my team today, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful, authentic, strong, diverse team. So it spreads. It's contagious.
Well, Jennifer, I hate to say this, but our time has come to part. But I do want to thank you so much for being here to BS with me today. And I just applaud everything that you've said, everything that you've done. I'm so glad that you agreed to be with us.
My pleasure to be here.
Thanks to you, Jennifer, and thanks to everyone for listening. Until the next episode, remember that everybody is different, and different is good.
Hit it! That's what I'm talking about. Wait! Okay, now, from the beginning.
We hope you enjoyed the stories shared in today's episode of BS, Beyond Stereotypes. Join us next time when another authentic personality unleashes their uniqueness on the world.